Joining me now from Miami, Florida, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Kendall Coffey. Kendall, if we stipulate, and I hope you will for the sake of this discussion, that all of this political theater we're listening to with Robert Mueller today and the Democrat Party that's weaponized these committees, if we stipulate that this is all a predicate to possible impeachment or at least a non-constitutional impeachment, and what I call it, maybe through the electronic media, has anything, what you've seen today, moved the needle, in your opinion, in one direction or another vis-a-vis impeachment?
Not at all. And I think today was unfortunate. I wish it had never happened. Robert Mueller has given great service to this country. And it was unfortunate to have somebody of his stature called in front of Congress to basically be harassed when they knew going in he wasn't going to be able to say anything of substance. He wrote a very, very detailed report. And worse than just a net zero, because I don't think anything more than that came out of day. I think it's not only unfair to Robert Mueller to put him in that position, but also a bad precedent for other prosecutors. You know, these are difficult decisions they make all the time. They rely on a lot of confidential information. And the idea that either party can haul a prosecutor in there to second guess their decisions, ask all kinds of questions, get all kinds of non-answers because they know that's what's going to happen, and then sort of providing their own self-serving spin is just unfortunate. I wish today had not happened.
And both the DOJ and Mr. Mueller himself made it clear that this was highly unusual, and it should be highly unusual. And like you said, hopefully it's not lowered the bar and created a new precedence here. Only time will tell. Kendall, I want to go to corrupt intent. Interesting here, because first of all, we're all talking about an event that didn't happen, and that is firing Robert Mueller. So to go to corrupt intent is fascinating to me, number one. And number two, from a constitutional perspective, I keep beating this drum. The president indirectly hired Robert Mueller, which means that he can directly fire Robert Mueller. And oh, by the way, the investigation would continue whether Mueller was at the helm or not.
Well, and exactly, the president, and I thought I heard Mueller suggesting that the president maybe needs to have cause in order to fire, for example, someone in Mueller's position. I don't think that's the case. I think the Supreme Court has actually dealt with the issue of the president's authority to dismiss individuals and almost always rejected a cause requirement. We can't have presidents being tested on whether they had a good reason or a bad reason. They have to have a team they believe with, that they believe in and that they can work with. So that's why there's a giant constitutional issue of, if the president has unbridled authority to fire anybody who's at a certain level of position in the United States government, which our founders decided which was a good idea, which every Supreme Court has consistently validated, then does he have to have a good reason, or does it matter if he has a bad reason? I think in this case, I agree with a lot of leading scholars. There's plenty of disagreement on it that said that that's simply not an issue that constitutionally can be tested, that the president has the right to dismiss whoever, whatever, for any kind of reason, good or bad.
Similar to a work at will situation. In other words, the president of this company that I work for, the owner of One America News Network, can fire me at will. And he doesn't necessarily need a reason, as long as it's, up to the contract and the laws of the state in which we operate. But I want to go to...
Well, we hope they never do that, but well, you can see how...
You never know. You got to see our interactions behind closed doors. Indicting a sitting president of the United States, of course, this came up. We know what the DOJ policy is from two prior administrations. You cannot indict a sitting president of the United States, and we know why. And that is what the framers of the Constitution would have wanted. They wouldn't have wanted a sitting president being indicted because it would have necessarily hand-strapped that sitting president. So this is very consistent with what the framers of the Constitution would approve of. But it appears to me that what they're doing here, the Democrats, are laying a foundation for impeachment. And I think that this is kind of a partisan route toward this foundation for impeachment. But the question is, why would Robert Mueller, whose charter was Russia interference and has an entire, it's divided in two parts, kind of like the Bible. The first part is Russian investigation, and the second part is obstruction of justice. Why did Robert Mueller feel so compelled to go down that path, even though it really wasn't his charter?
Well, there's a lot of things that could be asked and dealt with more deeply. They didn't really develop as fully as I would have liked today. But look, Mueller had a huge issue put on his desk. Did a political party and the current administration in the White House conspire with a largely hostile foreign government as part of getting elected president? That's a giant issue. And yet this investigation went on and on about many other things. And I think that was unfortunate for the country. Lots of us, it's not fair to try to second guess as outstanding a person as Robert Mueller. But was there a scenario where you would have quickly gotten down to the core issues of trying to prove whether there was a criminal conspiracy, that's the word, of law, not collusion, between operatives of the Trump campaign and, of course, Russian operatives? And I think that if they had focused this very, very differently from the beginning, it could have been achievable to get a much earlier answer on the central issue, which, of course, we know was that there was no such conspiracy. That would have been good for the country, both here, politically, internationally. And that's one of the questions I would have for Robert Mueller. What are all the things you could have done to have resolved this within a few months rather than years?
I think there were moments in time where Robert Mueller looked rather weak and maybe showed his age. Maybe he's not feeling well. I don't know. But he didn't look very strong in some of his answers. And at some points, I think he looked just plain bad in trying to rationalize to some of the GOP questions as to why he did go down this obstruction path when it wasn't really part of his charter, and frankly, why he did not explore issues pertaining to the dossier, which to me necessarily is part of Russian interference in the 2016 election. Why he didn't include that as part of his charter, part of his mandate, part of his investigation, I will never know. Kendall, thank you for your expertise.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.